Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to one of the final panels of this year FTTH conference. Thank you for staying that long and coming to see our panel. I hope you are going to be rewarded, as we all are going to witness, I think, one of the most important discussions that we have had throughout the conference. The topic of this panel is challenges of the FTTH deployment in the rural areas. I am looking forward to have a discussion with our panelists. Let me introduce our guests. First, Mrs. Miriam Sulaberidze, CEO of OpenNet, public-funded company in Georgia with a mission of digital inclusion. Pedro Abad,
Hi.
CEO of Asteo, wholesale FTTH operator operating in the rural areas of Spain on a mission to provide internet access to all as a driver of socio-economic growth. Mr. Robert Murik, experienced international telco industry expert, currently chairperson on Comreg, Irish regulator, also vice chair in BEREC. And Mr. Mike Surrey, experienced expert and advisor to different operators, covering rural areas of England, currently at Alncom, deploying fiber optic in rural areas in the northern England. My name is Leszek Drozd. I am the chair of the Open Access Working Group of FTTH Council. I also represent FiberHost, who is a wholesale operator in Poland. We are involved in deploying FTTH network in the rural areas. I also represent an organization called Open Allies, which is an association of wholesale operators in Poland, operators such as FiberHost. And the topic that we are going to discuss, like I said, is very important. We heard the data yesterday. Europe has 70% of households connected to fiber optic networks, which is an astonishing accomplishment. However, there is still so much work ahead of us. And the challenges that we are facing are getting harder and harder as we are approaching more and more remote locations. I think that we, the panelists and the FTTH community, share a common goal, which is bringing fiber to all. FiberHost is taking part in this quest. We have connected over 1 million households so far, and most of which are in the rural areas. We have faced many, many challenges on the way. On each step of our journey, we had to strive to deploy the network. We had to attend to complicated and time-consuming procedures, trying to apply for permits, to agree with the government, with the local authorities on the deployment terms and conditions. And when we finally deployed the network, we have been facing a major challenge of take-up. Take-up is one of the biggest challenges today in front of the FTTH operators. It really needs addressing. Just to make the business profitable, we need to drive take-up as high as possible. We also face regulatory challenges. We have a discussion about wholesale price levels. On one hand, those need to encourage competition. We need to take affordability of service into account. But on the other hand, we need to provide profitability of our business. And we need to ensure that we have resources for further investments. Let me pause there. Those are the issues that I am looking forward to discuss with my panelists. But first, I would like to hear from you. What is your perspective? Miriam, please share with us your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Leszek. So first of all, I would like to express my gratitude toward the FTTH Council to let us possibility to share our experience with the audience and with each other. We live in the digital era where the internet has become the essential part of our everyday life. And those who are unable to use the internet can suffer not only from social, economic, but also educational and cultural impacts. So despite how many and what type of digital divide can be identified, its impact is really sufficient for those who are subject of it. So this is why we are focusing our effort to eliminate the digital divide between rural and urban areas of our countries. So to improve Georgia's enabling environment for the infrastructure development and increase awareness, digital awareness among the citizens, government of Georgia, with the support of the World Bank and the European investment banks, are implementing a so-called Login Georgia project. And this project is executed by the OpenNet, as Leszek has just mentioned, where the state companies that are established specifically to implement this project and specifically to develop fiber optic infrastructure in rural areas of the country and in high mountainous regions of Georgia. When I'm talking about the high mountainous regions, I really mean high mountains and very difficult terrain. For example, among the targeted geographical areas where we are developing the infrastructure, 200 settlements are located on the 100,000 plus meters above the sea level, and approximately 20 settlements are located approximately or above the 2,000 meters above the sea level. They are quite high and they have quite difficult terrain. The project itself, the whole project is 72 million euros and it is expected to be completed at the end of 2025. And within the framework of this project, we have to cover around 1,000 settlements of Georgia and give the opportunity to the rural citizens to have the equal possibility to use the internet and the digital services and broadband services that we in urban areas and cities are using. The aim of the project is to cover such settlements that lacks of the competition and the investment. And in contrast, we hope that this will catalyze the investment from the small and medium enterprises because they will be then serve downstream markets. So I would like to mention that OpenNet only develops the middle mile and the backhaul. We are not delivering the last mile part. This was decided by the government deliberately in order not to compete with the private sector and give them opportunity to even further develop their networks and to connect the houses. As of today, approximately 800 kilometers of infrastructure is already built and 1,500 under development. So we really do hope that at the end of 2024, more than half of the country will be covered with the fiber optic. I mean the settlements that are defined as so-called white zones, because in rural part, Georgia has quite a good, urban part, Georgia has quite a good coverage. So I mean only the rural part where the private companies do not plan to expand their network. these particular settlements are the settlements where the middle or small enterprises would be unable to expand their network due to the high cost of the middle mile. And this was the decision of the government to cover with the state network the whole country. So we were talking a lot during these days, and Leszek also mentioned that the problem nowadays in the world is the takeoff, and the Georgian is not an exception. We also have takeoff problems in the country, so we also understand that infrastructure development is vitally important to have an access to the citizens, but at the same time, increased demand from the citizens is also very important for us to have the successful project. So our Login Georgia project consists of second component also, which is called digital literacy component. The digital adoption program is the part of the digital literacy component that is led by the Media Literacy Development Department of Communications Commission. So in this case, OpenNet and Comcom, we are both beneficiary of the Login Georgia project, and the second component is specifically aims to increase the digital literacy of the citizens of the particular settlements where OpenNet is developing the infrastructure. The second component is mainly focuses on use of financial services and e-commerce, and also facilitates e-learning and personal development. That is really very important, that facilitates citizens' active involvement in the digital economy. So the component itself has started in May 2022, and as of today, approximately 3,500 residents of the particular targeted areas are already got the trainings that are elaborated specifically based on their needs and interests. So this is very important, that they are getting the training courses and workshops specifically on their interest, and in order to identify their interest, of course, the prerequisite is the needs assessment of the particular regions of the Georgia. As I've mentioned, we're developing the infrastructure. At the same time, we're delivering also Comcom is delivering the training courses to the citizens, and we're constantly on the sites, and we have constant communication with the citizens of the particular regions. So we're getting quite frequently their request on internet. So the first point with whom they can communicate and expect their needs of the internet are either OpenNet staff or the Comcom. So we are getting this information, and of course we are then directing this information to specific ISPs. At the beginning of our operation, we started this transformation of the information verbally, but then decided to digitalize this tool and to have digital tool for gathering and coordinating the demand need of the citizens of the targeted areas. And for this reason, we created tool Broadband G, which is very important tool where we're collecting the information from the citizens of particular regions and then directing them to the ISPs in order to let them know that in particular village or in particular settlement there is need for the internet and for the connectivity of each houses. So we really do hope that a synergy what we have with between our two components, infrastructure development and the demand and the digital literacy increase part, plus the digitalized tool we created with the Broadband G, we will facilitate elimination of the digital divide in Georgia. This is very briefly what we're doing in the country in order to succeed in rural development and increase the demand from the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you very much, Miriam. Indeed, your goals are set up high. I mean, literally high above the sea level. Pedro, please tell us about your experience in deploying fiber optic networks in the rural areas of Spain.
Should I go to the stage then?
Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So, my name is Pedro Abad, the CEO of Asteo Red Neutra, and we are a wholesale operator open network in Spain. And we would like to talk today about the challenges that we face in our rural deployments. And the first question I would say is, what to do when the glass is more than half full? Those are the data. Yesterday, the organization just published the latest, where Spain rates at a national coverage of over 92%. But if you only consider rural, after significant efforts over the last years, Spain rates at 78. This is latest. This information you have on the screen is from the previous years. The latest is, as I said, is 78. So quite high penetration in terms of coverage, even for the rural. But at Asteo, we used to talk that Spain is a rural country. This is the mix of municipalities we have in our country. Out of the 8,115 municipalities that we have registered, only 145 cities are over 50,000 inhabitants. In the other extreme, we have almost 60% of the municipalities that have less than 1,000 inhabitants. As a conclusion, you can identify that our country obviously have big cities, Madrid, Barcelona, etc., but the majority of the territory is rural, very dispersed. And that's really the challenge. And this is why, the reason why for us, why Asteo Red Neutra. Let me share with you a map of the country. On the left hand of the map, you can see that's our territory. In white is most likely the areas without FTTH coverage as of the last year. This is a previous year report. Brown means FTTH coverage. As darker the brown is, as more FTTH coverage we have. And then on the right hand, on the map on the right hand, you can see the municipalities that Asteo has identified in our first phase of the project to be covered. On average, our municipalities are below 1,000 inhabitants. And as you can see, are coincident with part of, most likely with the white areas, part in the countryside of our territory. And on the zoom, on the right hand, you can see the backhaul, because for us, this is a kind of chicken and egg contradiction. There is no FTTH because most likely there is no transmission. So the way we find the solution for this is building our own backhaul. This is the zoom you can see on the right. Our backhaul is underground backhaul and is connecting one to the other municipalities. The topology of our network is intended to cover the maximum number of municipalities, no matter the number of households or home passes we can find them. But also, one of the questions that we usually raise is, at the beginning of the project, Asteo is a young company, only 2 years running the race. We were thinking how we will impact on the rural population, how we can contribute to the digital transformation. And then at Asteo, we conduct a market survey, not in our municipalities, because obviously we are just reaching them with the fiber, but to others, similar profiling, less than 10,000 or less than 1,000 inhabitants. And some of the conclusions we have from this market survey, you can read here some of them. Basically, the number of devices that are connected in the rural, when you have available a proper fast internet connection, is more than 5 devices. But also, the most used, obviously, is mobile, but just after mobile is laptop, 77%, but also smart TV and tablets. And very important comment here is 6 out of every 10 inhabitants in the rural would not buy or rent a house in this such a small municipality without a proper fast internet connection. So connectivity is key for keeping the population in the rural. And last but not least, telework. 21% of these workers, as of today in the rural in Spain, already do telework. And this is even higher in these small municipalities, because obviously the need is much higher, but in comparison with the national average is much higher. So telework is one of the drivers that is fixing population in the rural as well. Converting the population, converting the rural, a new opportunity for this urban population to return to the rural, to deploy their professional career there. Just as a summary, this is the project that we are running out. As I mentioned earlier, we are trying to cover 500 municipalities, and for that, we are building 1,900 kilometers of this underground backhaul. With this, we will give connection to 170,000 home passes in these municipalities. And on average, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of households, is 400 inhabitants, 1,000 or so. And for that, we are investing for slightly higher than 40 million of private investment. Our business model, the way we are able to justify all of these projects is because of the wholesale, a neutral open network. And this is key. We have two major goals here. The first goal is obviously to bring the latest technology, the next generation technology to the rural. We are deploying XGS-PON networks, but also stimulating the competition for retail. And the reason why for that is because we truly believe that the population that lives in the rural should have the same options as a consumer to choose their provider as you do in the urban areas, in the cities. In our business model, obviously, we support local but also national ISPs to commercialize their services in these regions. But also, we have a couple of initiatives, strategic initiatives, to stimulate, to promote the kickoff of new local operators, because we truly believe this rural environment is also very open to receive more companies offering telecoms services. As part of these key initiatives, we are also supporting some Asteo tools and platforms to provide mobile and landline services on top of the internet connectivity. And obviously, as part of our services, this portfolio of backhaul services, dark fiber, capacity, or point-to-point connectivity. Because this is not just to cover the consumer services, but also any corporate or B2B service, or even to support the 5G rollout. We all know that these antennas that will be supported by 5G services should be also connected by fiber to offer a proper quality of 5G services. And our current stage, we are already activating 340 municipalities. All of these clients can already get a proper connection through our network, giving the connectivity to more than 120,000 home pass. And that's it from Asteo. Thank you. Robert, give the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Pedro. I have to say that your business model is very close to my heart, to FiberHost. I'm sure we share a lot of common interests and issues that we could discuss. I also think that wholesale operators should come together and try to discuss, challenge, and work together with the regulator for achievement of the same goals in principle as I see it. So cooperation with regulator operators, wholesale operators coming together. And speaking of the regulator, please, Robert, give us your take on rural areas and the challenges that we are facing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Maurik. I'm the regulator in Ireland. I'm here not to give you a real regulatory message, but more to explain what we have done in Ireland in order to bridge that rural divide, let's say, that we have. And we have a fantastic track record in Ireland of failed interventions in rural areas. We've tried it a few times, mainly with interventions to have fixed wireless access and mobile access in rural areas, and that didn't work out. So in 2015, the government started a new project in trying to put in place a durable solution for rural connectivity that was, future-proofed, that was sure to last quite a long number of years. And I want to tell you a little bit about that, and then also, because we're well into the rollout of and the deployment of our rural broadband plan, I also want to tell you a few lessons learned. So those two things. As I said, we have in Ireland, Ireland is a very rural country. About 75% of the country is rural. And in that area, we have about 20% of the population living. And not in distinct villages, but basically all houses dotted around everywhere. It's a bit like Galicia, but not in Spain. It's an interesting conundrum. We figured out which parts of Ireland were commercial and which were non-commercial. So in other words, we did a mapping exercise whereby we, on a kind of house-by-house basis, figured out which house is going to get covered on a commercial operator under commercial circumstances, and which houses and estates would not be covered. And as I said, that is 75% of the countryside, but if I were to show you a map, you would see lots of towns and villages that would be part of the commercial area, and then in between lots of rural countryside where we needed intervention. The Irish government invested, or is investing, up to about 3 billion euros to gap fund an operator to roll out in that countryside. We did a tender process. We figured out which company could do that for the lowest price, and that is now being rolled out. This is a wholesale-only operator, of course. You wouldn't in Europe you wouldn't be allowed to do anything else if you subsidize a network, and that means that in rural Ireland, you can get connected to the national broadband plan operator and choose between over 50 retail operators. You have actually more choice in rural Ireland if you get connected than in many towns and villages. But state aid is the way we did it, tender process, and then one of the companies, a company got the contract and is now rolling out. What we found out was that in the beginning, the targets were set too high. In the beginning, the rollout, partially because every company has startup issues. If you start to roll out, you have to get to know the people who are working in local communities. You have to get to know how to get your processes right, etc. In the beginning, the rollout went very slow, and COVID had to do with that too. But now the company has picked up steam, and we're tracking the targets very nicely. So we think that in about three years, a little bit more, we should have covered all the houses and premises in rural Ireland. What is interesting, I think, is that because the government took initiative very early on, it kind of forced the commercial players to really think about their FTTH rollout. In other words, they had to think, gosh, if I say to the government that I won't invest here, they will steam ahead, and if I then don't invest in another part of the country, the government will do that too. So it stimulated the rollout in cities and towns and villages as well. We basically saw commercial parties getting their act together once the government has started. And the other interesting fact is that we have seen a rollout almost from the fringes in. We started with rural Ireland first before we kind of went to the cities because of that initiative that the government took. So that clarity, I think, in purpose was very important and has served us well. We now see that in the commercial area, rollout is speeding up by a number of commercial parties. And then we have rural rollout by the National Broadband Plan. And we're well on track to meet the target set by the EU. I think we will, as I said, in about 4 years, we will have 100% coverage, more or less. Now, what lessons have we learned from all of this? In overall, it has actually been a surprisingly positive experience, what we have seen, but it is a highly political issue. I think in many countries, but in Ireland as well, because lots of politicians, they have their constituencies all over the country, and if a minister or a parliamentarian can't get broadband, we would get it in the neck in the regulator or in the government department. Why is broadband not working? Those voices have more or less gone. Everyone can see that broadband is coming or it's already there. So the country now feels that they're getting the broadband that they deserve, that they get, and that they get it everywhere. One of the things that was very helpful is that Ireland has pretty good, has got a pole infrastructure in most parts of the country, and that is relatively cheap to roll out on. If you have direct buried leads, or if you have to go through a lot of ducts that are blocked, that is a problem. We have 80% of rural Ireland can be covered with the help of poles, and there are some ducts as well, but overall this helped A, to bring the cost down, and B, to speed up the rollout. What we also found is that local authorities, so municipalities, county councils, etc., didn't really know how to deal with licensing of new poles. The old telecom company, they had built that pole network many years ago, and if one needed to be replaced, they just replaced it. Now we had this new company rolling out a network, and suddenly city council said, oh, who's responsible for that? Who should I give a permit? So the government had to do a lot of work to teach the local authorities how to do permits, when to do permits, under what circumstances, etc. Another issue that we are lucky with in Ireland is that it is the countryside, but as I said, houses are dotted around. It is not completely empty or anything. That means that there are still enough customers per square kilometer to make a business case. And amongst those customers in Ireland, in the rural Ireland, you also have quite a few SMEs and local companies, and that really helps drive your demand. But talking about demand, although we have a reasonably good take-up rate, we were really, really surprised to see how reluctant people were and are to see the benefits of a fiber connection. You would say that if people are at the very end of a very long copper loop with very bad very bad coverage, very slow speeds, that they would be very keen to move. But what we found from numerous surveys is that people have built their life around the available internet connectivity. They will, if they want to do something, they say, yeah, but I can email. Fine, there's no problem me emailing. They think that that was already a big upside. Or they said, if I want to watch a movie on Netflix, I just switch every other device in the house off and make sure that it buffers. And they have found workarounds, and it was still quite hard to convince them of the benefits of FTTH. And that is something we have to continue to work on, because we know that these people are suffering from outages, from slow speeds, from all sorts of technical issues that they wouldn't have if they were to switch. So that's a major thing that we're putting an effort into. One of the final things that I would want to say is that the success of our rural network is by no means attributable to, but definitely attributable to the fact that the state also subsidizes the actual connection to the house. So you can get a connection for €100, whether you live miles down a small country road, a boreen we would say in Ireland, a small country road, or whether you live on the road itself. What the company who got the contract did and were forced to do is when they were rolling out, when they were passing homes, they did a survey house by house. So when somebody rang and said, I want my house connected, they look up in their database and they see, oh, it is a house that is 40 meters from the road. I need to install an extra pole. I need to bring a drill because it's on that side of the house. All that surveying had been done so that a customer can be connected in the first visit. And that, together with a low connection price, a subsidized connection price, meant that the barrier for customers is very low. And the rural broadband company that we have is explaining us that this is perhaps the single most advantageous issue that they have a very slick system, that they had to invest in that, but that is giving them a real benefit. So these are a couple of the things that we've learned, nothing shocking, but nevertheless an experience from a country that has tried to invest after a number of failed attempts in a rural network that should hopefully last us for another 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. I see a lot of similarities and issues, solutions with the projects, state-funded project that we have in Poland. I also would like to emphasize that it seems to me that in our panel we are grasping the three essential elements that emerge from this year's conference, for me at least, which is first, range and scope of the network, connecting more and more households, going further and farther into the rural areas. This is number one goal for us, because we want to achieve this 100% connections. But it cannot happen because we are entering more challenging areas, and the challenge is also economic feasibility of those investments. It cannot happen without open access and wholesale. This is the second crucial element that I think we should all remember from this year's conference. And then the circle closes when we add take-up to it, because this is what enables the economical feasibility of those projects that are state-funded and opened for all other internet service providers that could use those networks to provide competition, to provide services, variety of services to the end users. And if we have the demand, we can make it work, and we can invest even further and meet the goals. Mike, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience.
So good afternoon, everybody. Needless to say, at Uncom, we face all the challenges my sort of fellow panelists have already spoken to. What I really wanted to talk about was some of the ways we've addressed some of those challenges. You'll see two logos on the slide, Uncom and Railsite Telecom. This conference is nothing to do with trains, but the way we originally got involved in Northumberland is we were building mobile phone masts for the railway up there, and we saw an opportunity to do some aggregation and look at putting fixed wireless access onto the mast we built for the cellular, and that's how we came across Uncom and decided to approach it a different way. So Uncom as a company was set up by some local entrepreneurs 40 years ago. It started actually as a computer gaming shop. For those of my sort of vintage, you might remember sort of Commodores and all of that back in that era. And over time, it's always been a demand-led company. So they moved into IT services, but the connectivity wasn't there in the local area. So as a consequence, they began to look at how they could use fixed wireless access to provide connectivity to their customer base. That took them into being a retail WISP using the government voucher schemes. And then in 2021, they moved into fiber. And that's the point where I led a group of private individuals to invest into the company. And that's perhaps one of the first differences about Uncom. It isn't institutionally funded. We've pulled together a group of strategic investors, all of whom bring something to the company. The map shows the original wireless network, which is the big blob at the top is the county of Northumberland. That's for those less familiar with the UK. It's sort of north of Hadrian's Wall, but south of the current Scottish border. And the WISP network originally went down south of Newcastle into County Durham as well. When the fibre build started in 2021, in common with many rural areas, there is limited backhaul around. So it was very much a demand-led approach, making good use of the government voucher scheme again, but also working with other partners as well. So one of the things the company's very successfully done is build a sort of a large fibre network, and that gives an economic benefit to wherever you then want to build, if you like, a local access network as well. What it hasn't done is invest in a lot of things a lot of retail ISPs think they need to invest in. So it doesn't have its own aggregation network. It doesn't have space in data centers. It doesn't have huge investment in sort of software and systems. What it sought to do is find the sort of right partnerships to provide all of those things. And a key partner, what we'll talk about on one of the next slides is CommsWorld, who've got firstly network connectivity in the area, but they also won the public sector WAN in the county, and that's given a perfect synergy between the two companies to build out the network. I think what I would also sort of point out is in terms of metrics, as investors, we're very focused on sort of customers. So yeah, we've got 11,000 homes RFS. We happen to have passed 30,000 homes. We think there's a potential market in the county of sort of 50,000 plus homes. But it's always been very focused on the demand, getting the voucher to finance it, and making sure there's a healthy ongoing annuity revenue stream from the customers. Clearly, economics is challenging in rural areas, and one of the things we've done differently is to build a sort of an in-house build team. That works because we work in a fairly discrete geographic area. We typically work sort of 20 to 30 miles around from our base in Alnwick. We've got our own fleet of vehicles. Interestingly enough, that really helps with sort of brand awareness and take up as well. They're all black, which is an interesting, black and red, interesting colors to use, but they really stand out in the local countryside. The other opportunity it gives us is we've got a variety of different build techniques. So, hearing about poling in Ireland, is cheap, but obviously there's also the risk of storm damage as well. Where there's soft ground, we've got our own mole plows, our own ditch witches and so on, and we can basically deploy fibre for a not too different cost point than using poling, but obviously a more resilient network. Sort of talking to take up, I think engagement with local stakeholders is absolutely key. One of the images you'll see on the slide is what's known as was known as the Sycamore Gap. It was a big sycamore tree in a hollow in Hadrian's Wall, and sadly, due to vandalism, bizarrely the tree was chainsawed down some months ago. We encourage all of our employees to they're empowered to do what they can to work with local people in any way they see fit. Clearly, a hugely passionate issue to the local community. Straight away started a fundraising campaign, raised thousands of pounds to look at what the options are to get the iconic tree back in place. It's the same in the community halls. We often place our OLTs within local village halls. We provide IT classes. The other image is to do with storms. Storms are a frequent event in rural England, but not only do we react when a storm happens, before a storm happens, we're out there talking to the community, look, your network is going to go down, the weather is going to be bad, we've had 100-mile-an-hour winds, you've got to stay safe. Then after the storm, we'll work with the local communities, farmers, landowners, to actually get the roads cleared, the trees moved, and get the networks restored. So we're very much seen as being part of that local community, and I think that's hugely important to driving take up. The final point I would make is sort of getting the right partners on board. So one of our strategic partners and investors is Northumberland Estates, who are a huge local land owner in the area. And for the land they don't own, they've got excellent relationships to get us way leaves, frequently seen as a barrier in rural areas. If you can get the right way leaves on private land, you can mole plow. If you can mole plow, you can get a very cost-effective network. We work with both central and local government on the various subsidy schemes. And one of the things I see as really key is kind of like a tripartite relationship between, if you like, central government who design the schemes, local government who can help us with the publicity and help us take us to the right areas, and they know where the biggest impact of digital divide is. Having CommsWorld on board to provide all of our effectively backhaul, transit, disappearing. It takes a huge technology overhead office, and what that allows us to do is to focus far more in investing in that local network. What it's also enabled us to do is an element, if you like, of fiber swaps. So Comsworld will come and use our dark fiber to access public buildings, schools, libraries, and so on, and then we use their network as well. And that kind of aggregation gives us a huge economic benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. I see the time is running. I think we should just start the discussion as quickly as possible. Before we do that, before I start asking questions, let's get straight one thing. We all are aware of the importance of this mission, and we don't think that this is only the business. It is on the first place. It has to be profitable. Miriam, you have a little bit different approach to that because you are a publicly funded company. But other than that, we would like the business to be profitable. But in parallel, we do what we can to meet the expectations of the local communities, of the society that we are trying to connect. And we encourage them to use this technology, these services that we are providing for them. So, having that straight out, I would like to start a discussion because I think we need a major debate about. Now we can have a small discussion, but I encourage everyone to think about this issue and advocate for a big debate regarding the connecting each and every single household there is to the fixed fiber optic network. We as FiberHost participate in the state-funded projects, and we are strictly required to connect the houses, the addresses that are on the list provided by the governing authority of the project. Robert, you get to decide what addresses, what should be the scope, the range of the network. Do we want to have 100% homes connected? The EU regulatory policy is pushing us to connect as many households as possible. Do you think it's an open question to each of you? Do you think it is the best way to go to have this prevailing goal of connecting each and every single household, or maybe we should have exemptions and maybe we should do it in the most efficient manner, choose those addresses that are feasible, and provide some alternative technology to the other addresses, just to give us some more time to get there with the fiber. What do you think about that, Miriam?
Yeah, I can start. So, as I've mentioned, we're developing middle mile and backhaul only as an open net, and the idea is that we are developing the infrastructure in the settlements where the number of inhabitants is 200 and more. So this is defined deliberately in order to give the private companies and businesses to be more profitable, because when the number of people is less than 200, then there is no business case for the private sector, and that means that our network will not be used a lot. So in the villages, and in Georgia we have villages where we have only 5 inhabitants. In such case, the government has other projects and other solutions, and they might not be connected with the full fiber because it's really very even higher mountains and very little number of people there, they are living there. So then they have community networks, and they are subsidizing this part. So for our particular project, it is defined to have the number of households, number of citizens, 200 and more, in order to become this project more profitable for the private sector than to continue and to develop their own networks.
Thank you. Pedro?
For our case, it's a bit simple, because we just try to define the topology of the network to cover as many municipalities as possible, number one. So we are very flexible, trying to find, usually never is the straight line from one point to the other. So we take a long way to go there. But secondly, and very important, is when we deploy a municipality, we deploy fully the municipality. We don't leave anything behind. And also, on demand, we used to try to accommodate in the design, our CTO here present, Manuel, trying to accommodate if, for example, a farmer is demanding the connectivity, we try to accommodate the location of the farm into our backhaul design to cover as much as we can the entire society in that regions.
Okay. Robert, I will let you to give us what are your expectations as a regulator in the end. Mike, what do you think about connecting each and every single house to the fiber optic network?
We like to connect as many as we can. The more remote the house, the better the customer. So as a demand-led company, it works really well for us. But there are places where fixed wireless access is the right answer. Even to last sort of up to 1%.
So that's pretty clear. Robert, what would you say? Do you expect operators to connect every household?
No, but the problem is not in rural Ireland. That's the country I'm talking about. In a way, the government decided that they wanted 100% of homes in rural Ireland connected, and that is the contract that they have awarded. The worry that I have is more in the commercial area, where commercial operators are rolling out, but we are preparing ourselves for the fact that certain estates are going to be left behind because they were direct buried leads, or there was something difficult, or the owner of a big apartment building doesn't want to give access to a network, and that is giving problems. So we are preparing ourselves for small pockets of not connected houses actually in the commercial area, more so than in the rural area.
Okay. So there is a chance that we can get someday 100% of connections achieved. Fingers crossed. Thank you. With regard to the challenges, the biggest challenges that we should fight and we should look for the solutions to maximize and speed up as possible the process of deploying FTTH networks. What would you recommend we should address in the first place? Miriam.
Okay. From the Georgia's perspective, for what we see for this already, we are developing the infrastructure 2 or already 3 years, and the most challenge for us is the qualified constructing companies. This is really a big challenge. I doubt that it is only in Georgia, I think in other countries also, but for us it is a challenge, especially the companies who are able to fulfill the work based on the requirements of our donors. So this is really a problem for us. For the project especially that has time constraint, we have to complete the project at the end of 2025. This is a big challenge for us, despite the really very difficult terrain and seasonality we have in Georgia. But the main problem, I can say, is the constructing companies, qualified ones.
So it's lack of resources, and the problem is in because those projects are so challenging, or is it because in Poland we have such a big scale of those investments that all the companies are taken, and this is the problem with our resources?
I think firstly, this is the qualified staff and the ability to fulfill the donor requirements. That is,
so
they
it's
are a
challenging.
bit afraid of that. This is the donor-funded project, so we have quite strict technical requirements that have to be fulfilled because the infrastructure that is state-owned infrastructure has to be very high quality infrastructure. So I think this is the main problem for them. And plus for the non-resident companies, this is the terrain, which is really quite difficult in Georgia, and they not used to this type of terrain, and they don't know very well how to work on that terrain, and rocky terrain, and so on and so on.
Yeah, so it's challenging. Pedro, are you satisfied with the pace of your deployment? Could you do it any faster? What could help you?
Never satisfies, as you can imagine. But the major challenge we face is on the executional part for the civil work. Let's say the backhaul is extremely connected or linked to the permits and the licenses to execute. And in Spain, we have, I don't think it's just Spain, but one of the challenges is for the civil work of connecting the municipalities. FTTH deployment is a little bit easier from an administrative perspective, but in terms of project planning, for us the headache comes from the different administrations' alignment to get the permits on time to be efficient. That's the major pain we face.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. We also have problems with time-consuming and complicated procedures. Getting permits is one of the things that makes the process slower. Robert, did you introduce any improvements in those procedures? Maybe some preferential terms for the operators who were developing infrastructure in the rural areas?
I would mention two headaches, if I could. One of them was that you roll out your network using existing poles and ducts, and especially the ducts often are blocked. And we've had quite a lot of problems about who is allowed to unblock, who pays for the unblocking of ducts. That is a problem that really slowed down in the beginning, at least. We've got it hopefully more or less solved, but blocked ducts and who pays for it and who is allowed to do that was a major issue. The other headache that I would mention is converting homes passed to homes connected. And we've seen too many examples of somebody wanting to have fiber installed and technicians having to come 4, 5, 6, 7 times before it finally got done, because the operator was badly prepared and the subcontractor was badly incentivized. If you see what I mean, if they got paid for a visit, then they were incentivized to come back again, and so the latter one is a consumer nightmare. The first one is an operator nightmare.
Did you use energy poles to go in the air with the network?
Yes, one of the open access networks in Ireland is using electricity poles. That has its own set of problems in the sense that your rollout is an awfully lot slower because of all the security measures that you need to take. And secondly is that telecom poles go by the road. You know, they're on the side of the road. Electricity poles go right through a forest, right through, and that is far more difficult in terms of using them as a rollout mechanism. Yes. So we see the electricity company being quite reluctant giving their poles for fiber.
Well, in Poland, those poles, electricity poles, were the foundation of the deployment of the fiber optic networks, and there was much regulation made to encourage to say diplomatically, energy companies to give access to those poles on reasonable conditions, and I'm referring to these security measures as well as the fees that were imposed by those companies. Mike, what are your experiences with the process of deploying network and the challenges that you faced?
I mean, for us, the sort of number one problem is availability of skilled resources. We're really looking forward to the consolidation of the UK fibre market, because all the people who are busy overbuilding each other in the towns can come and help us in the countryside, and there's just been a very overheated market for resource. It's interesting hearing the other issues, because I completely agree with Robert about, subcontractors and installs. We do our own installs, and we celebrate the fact our people will stay at a house till it's done, even if they're there for days. That's a luxury you can have if you've got your own people, but if you haven't got enough of them, it has a knock-on impact. And the other advantage I think we get is this whole sort of thing with risk transfer. If you have a contractor and the conditions aren't as they expect them to be, they'll stop work or put in a change request or so on. We had a problem this morning with a medieval bridge with a blocked duct. I have every confidence it will be solved by this afternoon, because somebody will have gone and worked out another way of doing it, and it's all under our own own control. So it does make a huge difference having your own labour force, but we still face the skills issues.
Okay. I would like to now come back on those regulatory issues that we have briefly discussed before the panel. My question is, I'm going to try to keep it simple and short, because it's a big topic, but my question to you, Robert, would be, do you expect infrastructural competition in the rural areas, or do you think that open access and service-based competition would be sufficient in those areas, regardless of the economic justification for overbuilding the existing networks?
I never say never, but at the moment what I see is that the state has subsidized the network to quite a high degree, because the business case just wasn't there. So if the business case isn't there by a long shot now, it won't be there. What you do see is some competition from fixed wireless access providers, for example, or at the fringes of that rural city divide, that you see some operators go extending their network a bit further. But no, at the moment, I think, given the fact that this network is going to be there, that it's open access, why would you do that if the business case is so challenging? So I don't see, at least in Ireland, the way we have defined it, I don't see a quick that happened very quickly.
Yeah. Pedro, do you think is the overbuild a threat to you? Would you like to cooperate with other operators by providing them access to your passive infrastructure, so they could compete with you based on their own infrastructure?
At the end of the day, an open network company is being born based on the principle of being flexible and open. So we are more than collaborative on finding a way to bring in better connectivity to the region. So in our case, we are usually very collaborative to any other company, because at the end of the day, the way we see this is a wholesale-only company is always a good partner to be. So we join in the journey our partners, no matter if they're retail or other wholesale companies.
Okay. Final question regarding wholesale prices. Miriam, how does it look in your activities? Are the wholesale prices that you offer regulated? You have them set up front?
Yeah, Though we're not the significant market power operator yet, but still we're using recommended prices of the regulator. They calculated the recommended prices and provided us, and I can say these prices are quite affordable to ISPs, and they are very happy with our prices. We are also happy, so-called, not as happy as the ISPs, but the prices are very affordable for them. Actually, this is more social project, our project,
Yes.
and the main idea is to have affordable final product to the end user. So this is the pace we're following. So, but still, we're using the recommended tariffs from the regulator.
Totally different with you, Pedro. This is a strictly business project, and you need to meet the expectations that you have in your business case, right?
Right.
So how do you set your wholesale
But
price?
we built our business case based on this wholesale model, and also very interesting is to bring attractive offering to the consumer for the early adoption of the technology.
Yes.
As Robert was explaining, the barriers of convincing to the population in the rural that the technology is not out of their scope, economic scope. So our pricing still remains extremely commercially attractive. So it's not regulated for us, but still the market regulates us in order to be competitive.
Question for you, Robert. There is this problem that deploying networks in the rural areas is uncomparable in costs to deploying network in the urban areas. So how does it translate to wholesale prices in your view? Don't you think, or maybe do you see the risk of do you think that the market can divide into rural areas where the services will be more expensive and urban areas where the costs are lower and the services could be cheaper?
I can't answer for other countries, but in Ireland we have given this company a subsidy with the express aim that would allow them to offer the network at similar prices as as customers in the commercial area. So that is kind of all worked into the subsidy amount. So it is an express aim of the government that the prices across the country should be similar, and that we shouldn't see a big price hike in rural areas. That is what the subsidy scheme is all about, and the contract between the government and that rural operator kind of copper fastens that. But at the same time, the pricing that we as a regulator set for the SMP operator in the commercial area is relatively relaxed. So we don't want to be too tough on the fiber operator because we want to stimulate rollout. So we are actually very forgiving in a sense in terms of price regulation in the commercial area.
From what you are saying, I have to say I wish you were our regulator because our regulator is not that forgiving. We faced difficult times in Poland regarding the costs and prices. Those are the issues that I would really love to dive into the details, but we are out of time. Maybe one or two questions from the audience. Anybody? No, we don't have any questions. So, as we are out of time, thank you very much for joining the panel. Thank you to the audience. This is the final panel. So, thank you for coming to the conference.